I know that wild foods and being out in nature, that whole nature connection side of that love lifestyle is so important for any sort of illness because that mind body connection is huge. And I do well when I'm, spending time outdoors. It's a really big part of how I manage MS.
Nature heals. It's as simple as that. And I don't just mean physically, I mean spiritually and mentally too. So I got my first taste of that when I was just 20 years old, and I made a bold decision to step into the wild. I did Outward Bound, and I had no clue what I was in for, even after training for 4 months in college. But man, did I grow during that time. And I wondered, after those 2 weeks in the Colorado Rockies, and I was finally able to come back to base camp and take a shower, could I do this alone? Well, the jury's still out on that one. But for Dr. Nicole Appelian, not so much. It's pretty clear that all signs point to yes. She spent 57 days in the wilderness alone, documenting everything for the TV show by the same name. And then she did it again, with nothing but the clothes on her back, her thoughts, and a true love of nature. But let's just say she comes with a very special set of skills that makes my 2 weeks in the wilderness sound more like a trip to the park. So, on this episode of Holistically Speaking, Nicole shares more about her journey into the wild, how her background in science and foraging came in really handy. Plus, she answers your questions about everything from foods that heal to the challenges of living both off the grid and on. Have compass will travel, my friend. Let's do this. Okay, so we're recording this on a Wednesday, and it is Woman Crush Wednesday, appropriately. And Dr. Nicole Appelian is here. And Dr. Nicole Appelian, I have to tell you, you are my woman crush.
I'll take it.
I am so elated to have you here on Holistically Speaking. I've been following you for quite some time. And as a holistic health coach, an Outward Bound alumni, and someone who really is in touch with nature and holistic living and just being present on this earth, you are a light, and you just share so much value with everything you do. So thank you for allowing me to hold space for you.
Oh, wow. Thank you for that. That's really kind. It's nice to be here today.
I have to tell you, I'm not the only one. I have a slew of questions coming at you soon, but I want to just hold the space for you. You are someone that has been in this world doing what you're doing for quite some time. You're an herbalist, you're a biologist, you're an anthropologist. You have a lot of ists after your name, by the way. Lots of ists.
I'm an ister, apparently. I'm an A-lister.
You're an ister. You're an A-ister. Oh my gosh, I adore you. But you are also a survival skill instructor. And of course, for anyone who loves television, you would know Nicole, Dr. Appelian, from the show Alone, which is such an amazing program. And there's so many levels to where you've been in your life. And I'm so interested to learn more about you, even though I have some knowledge about you, and my listeners do as well. Really, it's the how did your life go from this to this? We talk about how you have muscular sclerosis. You found that out in 2000. But my question to you first is, how did that journey begin? Were you already the herbalist, the biologist, the anthropologist when you found that out?
That's a great question. So I have all these sort of stages in my life. When someone asks me, what do you do? It's always this different, like this pie, and the slices keep changing size of what pieces are doing what. So it's been fun that I like to deep delve into things. And when I learn something, I sort of go down the deep rabbit hole and really learn it well. So it's fun to be able to bounce around and learn different fields. And I've been really pleased to have been able to enjoy that during my life. So for me, I was already a biologist and had worked in Africa and was interested in herbs, et cetera, when I got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And I got diagnosed in early 2000. over 22 years ago now.
Mm.
And I lost the eyesight in my left eye, and which classic sort of MS symptom, and then had an MRI to confirm that I did indeed have lesions in my brain, and went downhill really quickly, and to the point where I couldn't even pick up a book because it was too heavy. The entire left side of my body wasn't working. I started having to use a cane, and then very quickly a wheelchair, and then, oftentimes bedbound. And luckily, with that sort of background knowledge of herbal medicine, et cetera, at first I was scared when I got diagnosed. I was young and I was terrified. And I really followed what my doctor said, because alternative medicine at that time was still very alternative. I feel that now there's more peer-reviewed research behind it. It's considered, there's naturopaths. I mean, those things didn't really exist at that time. So I finally, my gut finally kicked in and said, well, I'm going to either die or live a life that really, for me at that point, wasn't really worth living. It was a terrible way to exist. And so I took charge of my own health and did some deep dives. And eventually, through diet and wild foods and wild medicine, especially herbal medicine and lifestyle, I was able to become the person you see today, someone who's very healthy and vibrant and can do a show like Alone, for example, which was a really great test of how well I was.
Yeah. And going into that, being cast on a show like Alone, and I'm not even going to call it a reality show. I mean, because those kind of shows are different from the other reality shows out there. I mean, you're truly challenging yourself, and being alone, you're really challenging yourself, being in your own thoughts, being by yourself, having to survive, and just making a choice to take yourself to the next level. What made you go that route? What made you take the step and say, you know what, I want to do this?
That's a great question. Yeah, the first time they asked me for the show on season 1, I said no. First, I didn't really believe them that I'd be alone. It's the only reality show I've ever seen that's actually real, because you are alone with 6 cameras, which they train you on, trying to, hunt and survive and forage and live outdoors by yourself while filming it, which adds a whole nother level of difficulty to just living on solo out in the middle of nowhere. But my decision to go on when they asked me the second time was based on a few different things. One, at that time, there were very few, really, if any, women in survival shows on television. There was a real lack of that. And I wanted to make sure that women were represented to be able to show that not only can we survive, we can thrive. And I wanted adults and children, boys and girls, to be able to see that women were as equally as capable as men at doing these sorts of things. And it's not men versus women. It's just showing that we also have those types of skills, and to be a role model for girls. I thought that was really important and lacking in the TV survival world at that time. Secondly, I wanted to do it for myself. I've been learning and practicing these skills for so long, and I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it and test myself. It was a real test of my own personal skills. And then lastly, it was an opportunity for me to just be outdoors for, months. Who knew how long it was going to be when I went in, right? What a great opportunity to be able to live off the grid and have sort of a safety net under you and really be able to test these skills, but also see how I would do under those conditions with multiple sclerosis, because, I had been doing really well. And I know that wild foods and being out in nature, that whole nature connection side of that lifestyle is so important for any sort of illness, because that mind-body connection is huge. And I do well when I'm, spending time outdoors. It's a really big part of how I manage MS. And so I thought, I'm going to be fine out there. I wasn't really worried or concerned that MS would be an issue. And, for season 2, it wasn't. So that was season 5, had a couple other complications due to a vaccine that I was given at base camp. But that's a different story. But I really wanted to be able to test those 3 things, have those are the 3 primary reasons that I decided to do the show.
It's so interesting. It brings me back to when I was 22 and I did Outward Bound, which, the Outward Bound program is a survival program in the wilderness. And I did it in the Rocky Mountains in the Sangre de Cristo range. And I remember I was only there for 10 days. We're talking 57 for you. And some people have done longer journeys, right? But even in that short amount of time, it really challenged me to get to know who I am, and for you, and the time that you spent out there and having more life experiences, being in your 30s at that point. And I'm sorry, you did it, 10, how long ago was it?
40.
Yeah. So
it was, I'm 52. And so I did the first one at 45, I believe.
Yeah. Plus you add MS on top of that. There are life experiences that come with it. There's challenges that come with it. And then you're in your thoughts and you're among nature. And what is the biggest takeaway you would say you gathered from that? The first time, especially.
From my experience on Alone?
Oh, yeah.
Well, the importance of nature connection and the importance of being in a space that allows you to have your whole primal brain open. So I often get asked what was the hardest part about doing Alone. And in reality, being out there was not difficult for me. I loved my journey. It was fun. I ate pretty well. I was very happy. In the end, I left because one of my children called me home. And it was a joyful experience and really actually showed me that I'd come through a lot of sort of grief and trauma in a real joyful and peaceful way, and that I had joy and peace in my heart. And that was a really great thing to learn on that show. That was a real gift that I got from being out there. But the hardest part was coming home, not seeing my family and my loved ones. That was glorious. But the transition, because all of a sudden you're going from being in a place where every neuron is firing and open because you're feeling, you're one with the environment, you're listening to every sound, and our DNA is wired that way to be able to listen to every sound outside. But we're not wired to listen to every sound in our modern world. So the amount of stimuli that's thrown at us on a daily basis that we don't even realize we're getting, between lights and media and noise, etc., was so overwhelming that I needed to actually shut down my brain in order to even function. And I live pretty remotely. So it was a real lesson in what the modern world does to us, and that a lot of people are really stuck in fight or flight mode all the time because of the way that our modern construct is, right? And so for me, being out in the woods, I live in a home, obviously. You're in my living room right now, right? Through Zoom. And but out there, right out my door, I have hundreds of acres of woods behind me. So I'm able to get outside on a daily basis and be able to have that deep nature connection that I believe is so important, and make sure that I'm not in fight or flight mode all the time, and able to drop back into that space that I was on when I was on Alone.
Yeah. And I think what people don't realize is that we kind of live in fight or flight. Our amygdala is kind of like this, is really our bestie. Yeah. We just have to figure out, keep her calm. I make her a female. I call her Amy, but it's keeping her safe and letting her know that you're safe from the elements, and the elements could be technology. It doesn't necessarily have to be a huge Kodiak bear coming at you. It's right. There's millions of Kodiak bears coming at us, and it could be just the television being on. It could be work coming at us. So would you say that, did you feel a sense of calm more so being out there than when you came back into your everyday space?
Oh, 100%. I felt much calmer out there. Really, and I get to spend large amounts of time alone in nature, which has been such a gift. And when I'm in those spaces, I feel very, very calm and really peaceful and very happy. That fight or flight mechanism is really important when you're living on the savannah and you have to know if there's a black mamba or a lion there. That's very important. And that's what we've developed because we had to have that for safety. But it wasn't developed for our modern world because these things are being thrown at us all the time, and we haven't had time to adapt, right? Evolution doesn't work that quickly. And so we haven't been able to adapt to our modern society.
So I love that you just brought up the savannah, because I wanted to touch on that. You also are a guide in Africa. You have a nonprofit, and you've been doing the work with the Bushmen for how long?
Well, I've been working in Botswana since I joined the Peace Corps in 1995. So that was been a long time. And then all my doctoral research was centered around two communities of Kalahari, San Bushman, one of whom's like family to me.
Mm.
And that's the community where I have the Origins Project, which is a project basically that I paired with them and a couple of other people in order to basically preserve cultural heritage as they want it to be preserved. It was something that they had wanted, and they came to me and asked for myself and my friend John's help on that particular project. So it's been a great inspiration. And I've learned so much from them, mostly about how to live your daily life and parenting. And boy, there's so many lessons that I've learned from them. I feel very blessed to have the time that I've been able to spend with them.
How often do you get to go out to Africa?
Usually once a year, for usually 2 weeks to a month, depending on the year. Obviously, COVID has put a kibosh on that, and I haven't been able to go for a couple of years, which has been really difficult. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be able to go back later this year.
Is that a program that you actually open for people to join you on those kind of trips if they're wanting to learn more? I mean, I know there's the safaris out there. There are the trips where you can learn more about conserving nature and conserving the areas of which you're traveling to. But is this a trip that is an educational journey for those who might be interested in being part of it?
Yeah, so I usually, in the past, every March had an educational journey that people could join me on, where I would visit with this particular community, and people can learn from them, experience what their daily life is like, go out and forage and make medicine and track and, learn how to make fire and learn. But more importantly than those things, really learn how they live their daily lives. And this community is just so open, and they really want to share what their lives are like with others, because they realize that they hold something that a lot of us have lost, and that their knowledge is actually really important for the rest of the world to learn. And so they're very open about sharing their lifestyle and what it is they do on a daily basis.
I love that.
And not to mention
it's so much about connection too. I mean, we live in a global village now. We really do. We live in a village where you can be across the world just by logging on to the internet, and there's such value in learning about other cultures and being respectful, but also taking away something from what you learn that maybe you can incorporate into your own life. And that's what I've seen from every place I've traveled. And goodness, I mean, where you go, that's one place I would love to go, which is probably why I asked. But what we learn from other cultures and how we realize the basics go back to family, connection, a village, and just the basic things that we need to have gratitude for,
Exactly. I feel that the people that are the happiest in life are people that are fully connected, and that's connection with yourself, connection with others, and connection with nature. Those are the three big ones.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
I was watching a video where you mentioned that, and it's so true. I mean, if it is a trifecta. You can't do one without the other. You have to do them all. And maybe they're not equal. Maybe you don't spend as much time in nature as Dr. Apelian does. Maybe you spend a little time in nature, but just even getting out in the open air and vitamin D and just listening to the sounds around you is so therapeutic. I know, yes, I love to work out, but my best workout is a walk in nature where I'm really in the now and paying attention to the sounds and the things around me,
Yes, and you just hit it. It's the now. It
yes.
keeps you in the present moment. That's what I loved about being alone, is I was always in the present, because all I was worrying about were my simple needs of fire, shelter, water, food, and if I was hurt, some sort of, medical, making myself, better from whatever injury I had at the moment. So those things are really important. And by, that old mantra of chop wood, carry water really holds true, because when you're doing things like that, or you're doing an ancestral skill, or, weaving a basket or making a fire, like you're just in that moment right then. And it's, not getting pulled out of that moment and staying right there is super important. And that staying in the now is really, really huge.
It comes back to what I hear a lot from my clients when they're like, I feel like I did nothing today. I'm like, yeah, but nothing is something. Nothing is something. Like, it's okay to.
Well, that's the emphasis.
Yeah. You're right in the moment when you're doing nothing.
Right. As Americans, we really
Yeah.
Right. We put all this emphasis on production. So even like the question you ask your spouse or your kid when they come home, right? What did you do today? Well, right there, you're asking about production. Of course, you feel bad when you say, "Oh, well," you feel like you have to have a laundry list of things that you accomplished. But if you ask a connective question, what was your favorite part of your day? What did you experience today? How's your friend so and so? Something that's connective instead of productive. That's more engaging, and also it changes your idea from being productive to connective, because really the connective is more important than the production. And I feel that other countries often get this right. My publisher for my books in Romania, and they don't work weekends, they don't work nights, they take all their vacations, they don't work past 4. They get together in the square and they see they're with other people. And I put pretty strict boundaries on no weekends, no nights, very occasional exceptions, so that I have really good quality time with my family. And I feel that that's so important. But I feel in our culture, we've kind of lost that, because there is this emphasis on working hard, et cetera. And a hard work ethic is different, right? I have a very hard work ethic, and I instilled that in my children, and that's different from working all the time, right? You have to put boundaries.
We have this philosophy, I think, in this country, especially. It's live to work instead of work to live, right? That whole idea of like when I remember going to Ireland 10, 15 years ago, and they were just kind of like, day is done, gone the sun, right? And maybe their work was in the evening, but when they were done with their work, they were enjoying time with family and friends. And here we are so go, go, go that there's that guilt feeling of not doing. And I had a beautiful conversation yesterday with a fellow friend of mine who had said, we spend too much time being human doings and not human beings.
Nice. Oh, that was
right. Can somebody put that on a bumper sticker? Let that be a meme.
Yes, that's brilliant.
Right? We do. It's that human connection, and it's that feeling of habitual overdoing. Right?
Yes.
Feeling like if we are not doing something and producing something and putting something out there and working the line, then we're lazy and we are not we're not productive. But the thing is that you need that self-care. And I know for you, just from what you've shared, the importance of self-care is so necessary.
It is. And I've had to learn to say no a lot too. There's so many, I want to say yes to everyone who asks me for like a podcast or an interview or whatever it is. And I've really had to put boundaries around that, because otherwise all my time would be filled, right? Or not answering every email that comes in, right? Because otherwise I'd never be able to spend time with my family, or my friends, or by myself. And that's so important. So, the trying to figure out strategies to be able to make the maximum impact that still protects me as an individual and keeps me healthy, and being able to still, write books and put out great information for people and run the apothecary and do the things that are really important. And so, put the big stones in first, and then, the little ones can fill up. So that's been an important lesson.
Let me say thank you for allowing me inside your boundaries and saying yes to Holistically Speaking. I'm so glad that you're here. And I just want to mention those listening, this is Dr. Nicole Apelian. You might recognize her from the show alone. You might recognize her from her 3 books, of which I have one. I'm getting the other one. My mom gave me this one. My mom introduced me to who you are. I love that. My 81-year-old mother. This is the Lost Book of Herbal Remedies, but you have the Forager's Guide to Wild Foods and Edible Plants. You have and you have your reference guide, right? The reference guide as well, which is the Survival Guide in Nature. Mm-hmm. And those 3 books together, where were those books when I was going Outward Bound? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, I'm working on one now that'll be out hopefully this year on it's the Holistic Guide to Health. So that's
gosh, anything we can do to heal from within, anything we can do to find ways. Like, look, Hippocrates, as much as we know, said, "Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food." Right, yes. And we need to know that there are possibilities. Not that we should not have modern medicine, because there is a place for it, but knowing that we have the tools and we can look to plants and that which exists around us for guidance and knowledge. It's knowledge we learn from nature, don't we?
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be one or the other. Western medicine can blend with herbal medicine really beautifully. I just feel that it's overused, right? And there's a lot of things that herbs can do instead of. So in our house, herbal medicine's our frontline. It's our number one go-to. It's what we primarily use. If we need to supplement with something, we do. I don't perform surgery on myself unless I'm in the middle of nowhere and have to,
I'm very happy to hear that. Don't add any more ists after your name if you don't have to.
Exactly.
Listen, friends, holistically speaking, who are listening, Dr. Nicole Apelian, and you are listening to this podcast on Squadcast. If you have any desire to start a podcast of your own, I have a free link so you can get 7 days to try it out yourself. And I want to get into what we just talked about, which you mentioned you have your apothecary, to expand a little bit more about that, because I'm sure that's come from all your experience as the herbalist, biologist, anthropologist, survival skills, wilderness instructor, and everything else that you've learned just in your years on the planet. How did that come about?
So, I never was in business before, right? I'm a scientist. I'm an herbalist. So originally, and I have, an online apothecary. People can go to nicolesapothecary.com, and I've got tinctures, herbal tinctures, which are herbal extracts that you take internally, and salves, which are things that you put on externally. And how it first started is, first I was making things for me. Then as I expanded, friends and family started wanting to buy the things that I had because they work. And then I expanded and started making them for when I'd go to gatherings that I would teach at and have my own little booth, and people started purchasing them. And, it grew until finally there were so many people who were utilizing the herbal medicine as their primary go-to medicine, especially in regards also to autoimmune illnesses, because really the Western medicine doesn't really have anything to offer autoimmune. And really, if you're between diet and the medicinal mushrooms that I use every day, really that's what I use for MS. And so many people use that for autoimmune illnesses now because it works. And scientific research has luckily now caught up with peer-reviewed research around those. And so my online apothecary has blossomed and is now a full-fledged business. But I love that you can do well by doing good, right? So I try to have a lot of information. I read a lot of, blogs and have those out there so people can learn how herbal medicine can benefit them and what benefits there are out there. And I always try to include, links to peer-reviewed studies, et cetera. So there's as much as people want to deep dive into it. We do the deep diving for them so then they can just, read the final results of what herbs work for which things.
That's one reason why I love working with integrative medicine doctors or doctors who are more on the holistic approach, because they're doing functional medicine or bringing in both into your practice. Even if you're not a practicing doctor per se, there's something to be said about those who are in the science field that are okay going outside of just the PubMed, the peer reviews, and realizing that we have so much around us that we should look into as a possibility,
Exactly. And one of the things what we carry are called tinctures or extracts. And what I really like about those is they're in a liquid form and they're really concentrated. So instead of, for example, if you take a pill form, a lot of that gets lost to your digestive system. So you actually don't absorb that much of it. Whereas when you take a tincture, which is you take a dropper full, you put it in your mouth, and then you swallow, and it all gets right into your bloodstream within usually about 4 minutes. So it's pretty instantaneous, and you're able to absorb all of that medicine. And it's also a really great way. For example, there's things like stinging nettle, which you can make a tea out of it's allergy season, or if you have rheumatoid arthritis, et cetera. Really wonderful for those things. But it's a lot of tea to drink, and you can't carry tea around with you. Could maybe carry a tea bag around with you, but I'm not going to do that on a daily basis. So for me, just a quick tincture during allergy season keeps the allergy free, and it works really, really well. So I like the portability of tinctures too. So it's just a nice way to be able to get herbal medicine easily into your bloodstream and have it work really quickly and effectively. So that's why I primarily carry tinctures.
Yeah, the accessibility of it, the portability of it definitely is helpful. Let's talk about the medicinal mushrooms. I'd like to talk about that a little bit. This is an area that we're hearing more conversations about people taking the journeys looking into more medicinal medicines with mushrooms. And there's still, there's still that kind of, much like you were talking about with complementary alternative medicine just 10, 20 years ago, people are like, what is that woo-woo stuff? There are still people out there. You know what I'm talking about. It's a struggle. It's still a struggle sometimes. But there are folks out there that question if this is kind of like going back to Woodstock, everyone's getting high, taking a trip. And how can you support your backing of medicinal mushrooms and the use of for your own health and well-being?
Yeah. So what those people are talking about are psychedelic mushrooms, which have their own place. And there's a lot of new research out around psychedelics and, PTSD, et cetera, and psilocybin. That's not what I carry in my apothecary. That's a very different type of substance. And, if in larger doses is mind altering. So that's different from medicinal mushrooms. Although I will say those can be medicinal and there's a lot of great research out around those. But that's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about are I take 4 mushrooms every day in tincture form. And it's because mostly they are, one of the main reasons is they're immunoregulatory, which especially with an autoimmune illness, they're able to regulate your immune system, upgrade, downgrade, depending on what's going on. And that's really important for an autoimmune illness. They're also all anti-inflammatory. They're antiviral, which is really important in today's modern world, right? And they also, each of them have different other things, especially with response to stress and inflammation. All of things that a lot of us are dealing with on a daily basis. So for example, I take lion's mane mushroom every day. That's one that this particular tincture, it's really good for, they've shown to boost mental functioning and also stimulate nerve growth factor. So anyone with MS, like I have, anything to the nervous system, dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, the research around that's really amazing because it actually increases something called nerve growth factor, which is involved with potential of remyelination even and regeneration of nerves, something they didn't even think was possible even 10 years ago. So the research around that's been really exciting. It also is really good for leaky gut. A lot of people are dealing with digestive issues, mostly related to diet. But even if they change their diet, they still have to do some repair. So that's been really good for gut inflammation. Reishi also, same thing. I take reishi mushroom every day. I hear a lot of people doing like teas or coffees, and that's good, but it only gets part of the medicine. And what I like about the dual extracted tincture is you get everything that extracts in the water, like you would get in a tea, which there's a lot of the polysaccharides, which are really good for cancer. But you also get all the triterpenes, and those are all the things that extract in alcohol. So you basically, all I'm saying is you miss half of it if you're taking it only in a tea. So you really do want a dual extracted tincture. And I take reishi. It's called the mushroom of longevity. They say it's anti-aging, it's really what's been used in Asia as frontline medicine also is for cancer and things like that. But it's great for inflammation. It's good for adaptogenic, so it helps you deal with the negative effects of stress, good for hormone imbalances, good for restless legs, good for really for blood sugar. Really, it's kind of an all around, everyone in my family takes it every single day because it is so useful, and not just for people with autoimmune illnesses, just across the board. And along with that is turkey tail mushroom, which also is probably the most well-researched mushroom around cancer, both for prevention and healing, and can be used in conjunction with modern technologies for cancer. Does help regulate the immune system, but it's a really great prebiotic, so great for your gut, and also really good for things like HPV or anything, also really good for shingles, and have had, again, great research behind it. And then the last one is cordyceps mushroom that I take every day. Now that's primarily used, it's antiviral, and it's actually very good for respiratory illnesses especially, but and it's also good for brain fog, as is reishi, and lion's mane actually, which a lot of people I know are having problems with nowadays. Immunomodulatory like the others, anti-inflammatory like the others. But also is really good for fatigue, as is reishi as well, and really good for improving like athletic performance and for mental stimulation and concentration. So those are the 4 that I take daily because I I feel the effects. And it's funny if I forget to take it later in the day, I'm like, what's wrong with me today? And I'm like, oh, I didn't take my mushrooms this morning. That's it.
I'm so glad that
I noticed it,
Yeah, I'm so glad you touched on that, because the reason why I brought up the medicinal and the psychedelics is because that's the misconception that we think medicinal mushrooms, the common, that most are going to think, oh, I've heard about that, the psilocybin, like you mentioned, but there's so much. I've even learned about mushrooms just in foraging with my friend Lex, who does, the mushroom hikes and the foraging as well. Is that the chaga is great, and what else have we? The hen of the woods. I mean, there's different kinds of mushrooms, and they're delicious too. Like cooking with them, right?
Yes,
I've learned more about cooking in that plant-based way, just how it supports you, But here's a question. You're mentioning 4 of these that you love to use. Obviously, your location makes a difference too, because maybe are all of these mushrooms going to be growing all over the country or all over the world? Location does make a difference.
Yes, they definitely. Location does make a difference in what you have access to. Like I love chaga mushroom, for example, but I have an autoimmune illness, so I don't take chaga on a daily basis because it's too stimulatory for me personally. So you have to also be careful to really look at what you're taking and make sure it works for your body type and also whatever's going on in your body itself. So. Yeah. Definitely. And incorporating things into your diet is the other thing, of course. Like you were saying, you are what you eat. So I really do try to incorporate wild foods into my diet as much as possible, especially, in the spring when right now things are starting to bud. I'm on the West Coast, so we have an earlier spring maybe than other places. But soon the miner's lettuce is coming up right now. And so I'm putting that in my mouth as I'm walking through the woods, and soon the maple blossom buds will start, and different things that are coming out that I like to eat. I know the stinging nettle is going to be starting to come up soon, and I'll be harvesting that. So I really do try to eat as much as I can, and then preserve as much as I can, so I can throw it in my soups in the wintertime too.
Yum! There's always time for soup, isn't there?
That's the other tagline. There's always
yes. Seriously, I'm one of those people that will have soup even in the summertime. I don't care. I love soup. And there's so much, it's everything you can do. And you know what? That goes back to connection and community, how people brought back whatever they foraged and they made the soup from what they found. And there's some connection in that and community. And it's beautiful. I think there's even a book. What is the book? Duck Soup? I can't remember. Stone Soup. Oh my gosh. I remember my mom buying me, my mom who bought me your book brought me that book as well.
Go Mom.
Go Mom. All right. So listen, we have a lot of questions that people have shared, and I would love to throw these at you. These are some great questions, and I'm so elated. Thank you to everybody. Oh no, we have that too. Oh, have you been watching and listening to my show? I do a rapid fire as well. That comes a little later. All right, here we go. So this question's from Courtney, who watched Alone and is very familiar with the show. She said, "How do you cope with being alone in the wilderness and with your thoughts?" So, how do you cope with being alone in the wilderness and your thoughts? Thank you, Courtney from New York.
I think a lot of people are going through this with now being alone through COVID. So many people are really struggling with being alone, because when you're alone and you haven't dealt with your stuff, it all bubbles up. So one of the main things is hopefully you have to work through anything any sort of grief you're holding on to, any sort of trauma you're holding on to. Boy, I mean, maybe that's easier said than done, but we've all dealt with trauma, especially if you're, later in life, at some point you've dealt with something very traumatic, and you have to learn how to work through that. Otherwise, when you are by yourself, it will creep up and it will haunt you. So one of the ways, I do love being alone. I love spending time alone in nature, especially because I don't feel that I'm alone. I wasn't lonely on Alone. I had the bears that were glorious to watch and hang out with. The male bear and I would forage on the beach together. I had the pair of kingfishers who were friends. I had the mink who would, after a month of being there, got to know me well enough that would eat its crab in front of me. So I did have other beings there. Plus, when you're alone and your primal brain's open, you're connected to everything. So I felt not only connected to everything around me, I even felt connected to my kids, and they were very far away. I felt connected to others. I felt connected to, people who had passed. So they were all with me. And dealing with your thoughts, that's the main thing of you have to have dealt with your stuff. And if you haven't, it will creep up. But by doing tasks like weaving a basket or chopping firewood, that really does keep your mind in the present moment and keep you from going into that sort of dwelling, that chatter, that dwelling on the past, or that sort of worry about the future. When you don't have a big to-do list, it's just sort of the simple tasks. You're able to keep your mind more focused and stay in the present moment. So I hope that answered your question, Courtney.
That's a beautiful answer to the question. I love that. You mentioned being among nature and the bears and other animals. One thing I would love to know, are you actually a vegetarian?
Nope.
You're not.
I can't imagine being alone and being a vegetarian. I don't know what I eat a lot of plants, but I think you would starve not having all the protein.
Well, I'm glad I wanted to ask that to lead into the next question. And this one's from Kimberly in Chicago. And she says, she, I believe, lives plant-based, but how do you share the benefits of plant-based living, whether you're a vegetarian, vegan, or not? How do you share that and be seen when, if there's a call to action with using, let me word this question correctly. She has a 2-part question here. How do you share the benefits of plant-based living? Because for her, it's the horror of the animals and the dairy and the cheese industry. But then enjoying the health benefits of living a more plant-based life, which I would imagine you live more plant-based. Yes. You incorporate more plants into your life.
Yeah. I incorporate a lot of plants into my daily eating. I mean, we do eat animals because my partner raises steer. So we know that they're, taken care of well, and they're fed well, and they're organic, only all organics, it's organic, et cetera. Yeah. But if you're living a plant-based life, and, kudos to her, that works for her lifestyle and she's able to do that. It's living more lightly on the planet. So incorporating for me, I incorporate a lot of wild foods is how I really incorporate plants and into my daily eating, because I feel that the nutritional value I get is so high from things that I can gather and forage myself. And I garden, so I incorporate a lot of what I grow. I have fruit trees on the land. I have a big garden with vegetables. But even long time ago when I lived in a city, I planted my parking strip full of food, so that there was plenty of places to be able to get food and grow your own food. Even if you live in a city environment, you don't have to live on acreage like I do in order to actually grow all that you and probably all your neighbors need. So I'd say incorporating more wild foods and growing your own food, just super important, and great way to incorporate more of a plant-based diet, because it's right there to be able to go pick it right in your own yard.
Yeah, and I think partially, Kimberly, thank you so much for that first part of the question. I think the other part is, and I understand this, I get this a lot with my clients that are trying to incorporate more holistic living into their lives. It's not waiting for an illness to happen for you to change that way. Right. Trying to that. And I think that was part of her question was, what's the call to action to try to share with others, let's try this healthier way, so that as we learned, at the integrative nutrition, when I studied at the Institute, that the less you eat that's made by people in white coats, the less you'll see people in white coats. Isn't that like, I'm like throwing out some lines for you today, aren't I?
I like that. Throwing them down today. Yes, you are. That was beautiful. Yes.
But you know what I'm saying?
Processed food. Right?
Yeah.
Yes. You know what I like to tell people, because when you say don't eat processed food, it's like telling someone, it's really hard, because it's like when someone's on a diet, and they have a cookie, they're like, forget it. I'm going to eat the whole box. I already had a cookie. 80-20. 80-20 is my answer. So 80% of the time, eat what you're supposed to. That gives you the leeway for when you have a cookie to say, all right, I had a cookie. It's fine. It's part of my 20%. And you don't eat the whole box then. What I find is if I tell people 80-20, they tend to do 95-5. But if you tell people to do 100, they fail every time. That's my advice.
We go back to the kid that doesn't like to be told what to do. Right? Oh, that inner child lives in all of us.
Exactly. Yes. I have kids, so they don't like to be told what to do.
That's cute and everything, but I'm eating the whole thing of Thin Mints and you can't do anything about it. By the way, they're vegan.
Exactly.
or vegetarian, whatever. Okay, that's a great question, Kimberly. Thank you so much for sharing. All right, this one comes from, I was talking about him before. This is Lex. He has the North Feast. He is actually a chef and a forager, bushcraft and adventurer himself. And he said, how difficult did you find it to forage? How difficult was it to forage during Alone? And is there a lot of the same plants that you used from when you were back home to when you were, when you were out there in, where were you again? You were in Vancouver Island.
Island and Mongolia.
So was it similar?
Yeah, so I'll answer the second part first.
Sure.
Yes, it was very similar because both are temperate zones, and Alone really takes place in temperate zones around the world. They don't put us in warm tropical places because it'd last too long, right? They put us in places that are cold, and also they put us out in the fall and winter. So as far as species that are there, yeah, even when I was in Mongolia, walking around beforehand, looking at all the things there, I could recognize everything. Even if it's not the exact same species, it's close enough. So there are a lot of things that are sort of across the globe. So yes, great overlap. I did have to learn some new ones, of course, in a new area, which is always fun, but there tends to be a lot of overlap. So recognizability of the plants, if you already know them, no problem. Then the second part, how easy is it to forage? It's hard because they put us out in the fall and winter. So in the fall, you're getting the very tail end of berries, very, very tail end. You're getting mushrooms if you're lucky, and then you're digging roots. But then the ground freezes and things dry up. So you have to do your foraging as early as possible, and for both food and medicine. So I made sure I gathered as much as I could and dried it. So for example, I cut my knuckle off on day 42 or 43. They didn't actually show it, right down to the bone. And thank goodness I had gathered yarrow earlier in the season and stored it in my shelter. Since I'd done that, I was able to put it on, stop the bleeding, and then keep it from getting infected. Had I not done that, it would have been much more difficult. So you really have to, hedge your bets there and make sure you forage early, because it's not the magical time for foraging. It's the time that most people who live there, everywhere that we've been all over the world for Alone, Native people, wherever we were, they were getting ready for winter, and they would have been done. They were ready to sort of hole up for the winter and eat the things that they gathered all spring, summer, and fall, not be actively trying to gather at that time of year. So it's definitely a difficult time of year. And of course, then there's restrictions of, hooks and how you're allowed to get things, et cetera, and laws that we have to follow that add on and make it even more difficult. So, but for foraging, yeah, harder in the fall, winter, of course.
I can only imagine, like, everything you learn and you have learned over your time, just being, doing the work that you do, but also traveling to Africa, everything you've learned. Did the others that were on the Alone show have similar experiences? Was everybody kind of the bushcraft and the adventurer and the wilderness survival skill background?
It's very mixed. Everyone has enough of a background that they should be able to do well. They definitely choose people whom they think will do well on the show. They don't want to put anyone out there that's going to, first of all, they don't want anyone put out there that's going to die, because that's a definite possibility, right?
Yeah.
So, they are careful in choosing people whom they think are going to do well. But we all have our own different backgrounds and different skill sets. And I think those show throughout the show. Yeah.
Great.
But so definitely everyone's done Alone.
Yeah.
Really amazing people. And it takes a lot to go out there and put yourself out there and try it. Right.
Yeah, definitely.
So
great. Well, that was two good questions from Lex Taylor, the North Feast. So thanks for sharing that. He's actually the guy did I say that I've learned about foraging mushrooms. So I've learned so much. Even I feel like we learn from each other. Like we learn so much from our friends, and let our vibe attract our tribe kind of thing. So when you're around that, you learn different things from different people, and hopefully you're sharing what you know with others. So I'm always so jazzed when we're around that. Okay, this question actually is from Hillary from New Jersey. That's me. That's me. This is.
Oh my God! All right.
Oh my God! I'm so happy she's here. All right. So the question is, I would love to know: did you take any books with you, aside from your own? Aside from yours?
No,
you're not allowed.
So on Alone, you're not allowed a pen or a pencil or anything. You're not allowed any writing, anything to write things down. You're not allowed any reading material, because the idea is they want you to tell everything to the camera. So there's nothing allowed. Books, a pen, everything not allowed on Alone. Otherwise, they want you to tell your everything to the camera because that is your journal.
Yes, that's so great. What's that? Say that again.
And you end up telling everything to the camera. Yes, you really do, because it's your Wilson, right? It's your only friend out there. Wilson. You are by yourself. Yes.
It's your Wilson. So. That's so great. I love that. Yeah,
no, we weren't allowed to.
I didn't know that. For some reason, I did not know that. And I think of like, you know what I found the other day after you said yes. Thank you for saying yes. I found my journal from Outward Bound from like 1993. And I realized like, I filled this baby like it's crazy. And I don't know if I journal this much every day, and I journal, but when you have a place to put your thoughts, which obviously your thoughts were captured on video, that actually leads to one question that one of our listeners did have. It was Richard from New Hampshire. And he said, when you were on the show, were you truly alone? Or, you know, because we're so used to like cruise and things like that on these reality shows, but you truly were. Everything was you operating
we truly
camera.
Were.
Yeah.
Yes, we got dropped off, dropped by helicopter and left. And with all of our cameras, 2 trail cameras and then 4 actual cameras, including a really big Canon and tripods. So think about that. Every morning before we're going out, we are miking up, we're changing batteries, we're taking our tripod, we're taking our camera, we're taking our other camera, we're filming it. And then we're trying to do all the other stuff on top of it. So, and get multiple angles, and the better we get at editing, not editing, we don't edit. The better we get at filming, getting multiple angles, going up a hill, having to place a camera, go back down a hill, go back up to retrieve it. It's really difficult. The better we get at it, the more people think that, it has to be filmed by someone else. So no, it is 100% filmed by us. We are 100% alone. The only thing that's filmed, there is a film crew, and before we leave, they film us and do interviews, and they do B-roll. And then afterwards, when we come out, they'll interview us. So you get some of those, voiceovers and things that are edited throughout, but we are 100% alone the whole time.
So if it wasn't the Alone show, if you had to do something like this again, and let's just say we're removing the element of the cameras and you are doing the exact same thing, basically, out in the wilderness, 55, 60 days out there, what is one thing you could not live without? And I don't mean the survival things. I mean, what is one personal thing that Nicole can't live without that she would want with her?
Oh, boy. That's a tough question. I don't know the answer to that. Oh, I'll have to think on that. What could I not live without? I feel like it's going to be some sort of comfort item or something.
Yeah, right. I mean,
I feel like I was like when I'm out in nature, because I did another show called Surviving the Stone Age. It's on Discovery Plus. And we live like we did in the Stone Age. And, I didn't really feel like I was wanting for anything. I was with other people, which was kind of glorious. So, I mean, if I didn't have to be alone, I definitely would choose to have people whom I love with me. It will be a lot easier. It's a lot easier living in a tribe. It really is. As far as a comfort, I got to say probably either a book or a journal. I would writing something to be able to write my thoughts down, because the only thing about Alone is we don't get to see all the footage. So we only see the edited version. So I made sure to write all my thoughts down after I got out before it aired, so that I didn't only remember an edited version of what I'd done, because it skews your memory of it. And there's a lot of stuff, of course, that happened that most of it doesn't get aired. So I would say, something to write down my experiences so that I'd be able to remember them later. Yeah.
Wouldn't it be interesting to go back and watch all that?
Oh, I wish I could.
Like, what the heck did I say?
I watched all my footage. When I went to New York one time, I got to meet the sort of production person, and he knew me so well because he saw every moment of my footage, and then had to pick out what was important. And it was kind of incredible to be able to sit down and meet him and talk with him, because he really knew me.
It's so therapeutic.
I've never seen.
Okay. Well, I mean, I appreciate you sharing everything and being very open here. And thank you to everybody who asked the questions: Richard, Kimberly, Lex, Courtney, myself. I just appreciate when people love to ask questions of my guests. And thank you so much for being so open and answering them. I guess you've been pretty open before, so it's not really a stretch here since we have 57 days of Nicole on camera. But before we go, I want to do the rapid fire that you somehow knew about and brought up before. So
wow. All right.
And appropriately, Miss Eliza just showed up to say hello. All right. So I'm going to throw out a word, and what you're going to do is just come back with the first word that comes to mind. I don't pre-write these down. I write them as we go in our conversation, and I'm just going to throw out a couple words and just real fast come back and tell me the first thing that's in your beautiful little noggin. Okay?
Right.
All right. Here we go. Here we go. Boundaries.
Important.
Peace.
Love.
Camera.
Someone else, please.
I'm going to give you that one. Survive.
Thrive.
Thrive.
Oh, yeah. Thrival. Connection.
Mushrooms.
The best.
Oh gosh, just gonna get an endorsement from nature.
Nature, yeah.
Now officially endorsed by nature. Technology.
Useful, but in limited quantities, and you need to be careful about it.
Nice. Same thing with plants and nature. We need to be knowledgeable of that as well, right?
Technology can be dangerous. I feel that it's a useful tool because it's helping us connect today, right? But I feel that it's overused. So you have to be careful how you use it and how much time you spend on it. Boundaries around that are really important, but it is a useful tool. Yes.
I am in such agreement of that. So she's now endorsed by technology, or actually you're not. That's the opposite. No. You'll never get an endorsement from Sony or anything like that. All right.
I know.
It's okay. You don't need it. And the last word, alone.
Yes. It's important. It's important to spend time alone because that's how you really get to know yourself. And I'm gonna keep going on that for a second because I feel this is so important. Because when we were kids, we were alone a lot and we were able to be bored, right? And boredom breeds creativity. And now no one wants to be bored anymore, right? If they're alone, what do? They pick up their phone, they're on it, they're doing something. They can't just be alone with their thoughts anymore. And it worries me because I feel that we're going to be losing things like creativity and imagination because of technology. So that's why it's really important to use technology as a tool, but not as a lifestyle.
I love that. And how old are your children?
Oh, now they're all old now. So my baby's 14 and my middle one is 18 and he works at an electric car company called Arcimoto down in Eugene, Oregon.
Oh, wow. But that's still an age where technology is really, they're digital natives. They grew up with technology in their hands. They grew up with this thing in their hands. And I'm a college professor and I'm the first day of class, whether we're doing it virtually, whether we're doing it in class, I say, phones go away. You don't need to be on this. We're in a shared space. Unless you are performing or you're on call for open heart surgery or you're about to give birth, which you better not be if you're in my class, do not need to be on the phone. They're so used to the swiping and this and that. And it's like, I totally agree with you about it being used as a tool because we instantly go to this. You see people like texting each other sitting next to each other. It doesn't make sense. Right? I'm like, why don't you talk to that person? They're like 2 feet from you, right? It's so common, especially that generation. So I love that you mentioned that because it is important to be alone in your own thoughts and be comfortable with that, But I want to say thank you so much for being here. Is there anything that you would like to leave with Holistically Speaking listeners?
Oh, just, get outside, be happy, love the people, who are important to you and spend really good quality time with them. It's, they only get right now. And it's important to be with those you love and to spend good time in nature. And if people want to learn more about me, they can go to my website at NicoleApelian.com. I'm sure you'll put the links. And and if I have a twice a week newsletter that talks about holistic wellness. So if people want to get on that, they can hop on via my website. And it's been such a joy just spending this time with you today. I really appreciate your interview and your thoughtful questions. And I love the questions from other people. That was so much fun. So it's just been really, really wonderful spending this time with you today.
Thank you so much. It means so much to me when I'm able to hold space for those that I truly am inspired by, and you do inspire me. And when people say yes, that Touch, Move, and inspired me, I know that I'm able to pay it forward, and it's going to touch, move, and inspire those that listen to the show every week. So thank you to the listeners. Thank you to you, Doctor. It is such a pleasure to have you here, and be well. Always be well. And yes, we will share all those links. You're going to have every way to get in touch with Dr. Nicole Apelian, you're sharing so much too. I just want to say that you also have how to manage your MS and autoimmune issues, which we're going to share more about that, including your apothecary, including the 3 books you have. All of it will be there for you, my friends. And thank you again. You're a joy.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay, so wherever you're listening to the Holistically Speaking podcast, make sure you check out the podcast notes. You'll find all the links to connect with Dr. Apelian on there, from her books and apothecary to information on her nonprofit. So go ahead, connect, explore a little. And if you did feel a connection to this podcast episode, tell a friend. And of course, me too. Just leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere your headphones take you. And for more weekly episodes, make sure you subscribe so you never miss a beat. And with my birthday just around the corner and being Women's History Month in full swing, I'm still holding space for that one lucky lady to work with me for free. If you haven't filled out the form to hug it out with me in those one-on-one sessions, there is still time. That link is also on the podcast page. Shout out to David Seiss for editing this episode of Holistically Speaking, to my dear friend Lipbone Redding for always sharing the music, and to Squadcast for offering the space for voices to be amplified. I couldn't do it without all of you. Or you for tuning in week after week. Okay, enough chatter. Spring has sprung and you have some outdoor living to do. So get out there in nature, breathe the air, be kind to your mind, and don't forget to laugh.